Taylor from Cal State Sacramento's Department of Information Systems and Business Analytics. I think that's correct. It used to be the MIS department. I'm a proud Hornet grad. So we'll hear about some of the changes that are going on at Cal State Sacramento and some of the new offerings as well. And we'll do some curriculum review towards the end. We'll keep that brief. We've got 2 items from Sacramento City and American River Colleges, respectively, and then some resources for you guys. So thank you again very much for joining. Again, if we can advance the slide deck, please. I'm still seeing the first slide, Isabel. There you go. Thank you. And we can move right on to the next one as well, please. All right, so here's the agenda. We're going to try to stick to the time as much as possible because I do value your time and I do very much appreciate you giving of it this morning. So let's jump right into the introduction. Go ahead and move on to the next slide for me, please, Isabel. So as we get started, I've got some updated labor market information, and I want to give credit and thanks to Ebony Benzing at the Centers of Excellence, who's been on board for, I want to say, about 1.5 years now, Ebony, I think. And she's just been absolutely wonderful in helping our multiple sectors develop a current workforce and training opportunity information. I would strongly encourage you to take a look at that. We do make it available in the resources as well at the end, and we'll have information about it. But it kind of gives you a general update as to what's going on within our field. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about it because that information is nice and consistent and compact and easy to digest. A brief summary is things are continuing to look good for ICT, for information and communication technologies when it comes to the job market. Now, the data is, at this point in time, a few months old. The report came out on February 13th, so it's a new report. But of course, with the current situation, things may be changing. But if I know one thing, talking with my wife a whole lot more since she's also working from home and she teaches 2nd grade for Elk Grove District. Those IT folks are busy, but also more treasured. I'm not quite going to say more beloved, but certainly more appreciated than ever before. So kudos to those of you who are actually out in the field and who are contributing to make sure that we can do what we're doing here, which is meeting virtually to get some information across, and of course, taking care of all of our everyday business. And for those of us who went to college to work in IT, this is kind of, you know, what we did this for, because it is a service to others, and at this point in time, again, you know, we have lots of opportunity to make sure that our organizations continue to be able to do business, which, next slide, please, leads me to some updates, speaking of business, about what's going on in the sector here, and I'm going to keep this brief, but things that are happening this summer. So we are once again looking to schedule cyber camps as a region because the Sacramento County Office of Education got a grant and have built a wonderful ICT hub with all kinds of activities for K-12 instructors as well as students. So they're looking at different options for whether or not those summer camps are going to be held online, which most likely they will need to be. So I'm helping in a consulting role at this point in time, just to make sure that there is a you know, continuity from when I was running those camps over the last couple of years. But stay tuned, and you'll get information from SCOE, and I'll also share my mailing lists from the last couple of years to make sure that the people who might be interested in sending their kids to those cyber camps, and we're talking middle school through high school, are once again going to have opportunities. Go ahead and back up again for me. Thank you. Up one, please. There you go. The next item is the Summer Faculty Development Weeks, and quickly item for faculty. So for our industry partners, faculty have an opportunity to retrain or add to their skill set. And that is run by an organization called WASC, the Western Academy Support and Training Center out of Diablo Valley College. They do a lot of support, especially for the Cisco networking academies. For those of you who may not have heard, those faculty development weeks, and they usually do 2, and they do this time as well, one starting June 8th, I believe, the other one June 15th. Those have been made virtual, so they're going to have those online. They've changed some of the Cisco training that was going to be offered in person to a bit more of an extended online session. But most importantly, and I'm not counting your time here, I'll get to that in a second. Those development weeks are now free. Before they were $100 to attend. At this point in time, they are free to attend. Now that said, if you are a community college instructor, your time has value. So I have been working with the folks at WASC on some attendance and some completion information, and I'm very happy to announce that I will be able to offer stipends to faculty who attend those classes to make sure, again, that we can keep getting you guys up to date, and gals obviously as well. So look for information in your email from me about how to apply for those stipends for taking some professional development during the summer. And then last but not least, one of our success stories here has been NetLab lately, because a lot of our colleagues, of course, with the campuses being closed, have moved their instruction to a remote instruction setting. And the Far North Regional Consortium's NetLab, which is a remote desktop style environment for teaching that was initially designed for the Cisco academies to make Cisco equipment available. It still does that for us as well. But we've been, with the help of Sean Monson at Sierra College, who's spent some time designing some pods for business users, if you will, for Microsoft Office, etc. So we've got some offerings that are available both to college and to, I'm going to say, all the way down to middle school instructors. I'm working with a colleague here in the Elk Grove Unified School District who's trying to get her students into a programming environment via NetLab, and we're going to be able to make that happen. I sent out an email that obviously some of you guys got since I've gotten some responses a couple of weeks ago. Please don't hesitate, if you're a high school instructor as well, to reach out to me first, and then we'll get Jim Cosentino at Folsom Lake College in, who is our tech person for the NetLab. But there's lots of opportunity for us to help our K-12 partners in this time of remote instruction, and we're taking advantage of that. So don't hesitate to contact me. All right, moving on. That's enough for the announcements for the time being. Now let's start talking about our topic for this meeting, which is the cloud. Next slide, please. So interestingly, my goal here is to give you an introduction as to what cloud computing is, so we have a common understanding before we then get our industry panelists on later. But I did a presentation as I was doing my background research for this to the Cosumnes River College campus in 2012 about the cloud. So we've been at this for more than 8 years, pretty well 10 years at this point in time. And of course, some of the things that we've been dealing with in the academic world is, well, is this worthy of new curriculum, such as for the Amazon curriculum that's been working in Southern California and in the Bay Area? Or is this really just an extension of what we have been doing when it comes to servers and networks and infrastructure? So some interesting discussions that will keep happening hopefully later in the panel. But let's move to the next slide and see what we can work with here. So quick overview about the cloud. Application and storage services, some goods and bads about the cloud. What's, obviously a lot of us are benefiting from using the cloud at this point in time, but some of us haven't quite moved there for reasons. Let's talk about that. And then what is your forecast, and is it fully cloudy or partly cloudy? Let's move on to that. So the topic for today's meeting is business continuity. How can we use the cloud to make sure that in times of change, we can keep doing business? And let's take a step back and take a look at IT. What's the job of IT? And as I try to tell my students as well, and by the way, in addition to being the regional director, I have also been a professor of computer information science at Gustavus River College for the last 23 years. I tell my students, IT exists to help business be more efficient, so that we can do things more effectively. And that's hopefully a role that my students understand when they graduate. It's a service role, um, because if business have access to reliable information, then they can do business more easily and more effectively. So that said, should businesses, if I'm a typical manager who knows of the benefits of IT, but let's say I'm really just here to lead my teams to make sure my projects get done. Do I need to care where things are stored and how my data is available? And hopefully, if I'm that manager, I don't have to worry about that. Hopefully, my IT group makes that available to me. And one way to do that, and reliably so, is the cloud. Moving on to the next slide. So a couple of definitions of cloud computing that I saw. Basically a style of computing with virtualized resources. That word will show up a lot. And that's virtualized beyond the VMware virtual machines that some of you may be using in computer labs. If I take a look at Amazon Web Services, for example, you can virtualize anything from a server to a set of disks to networking equipment. It is typically done by a third party, but certainly companies that are large enough will also be able to set up their own cloud to have resources available in different locations. And typically those resources, just like our other servers, will sit in a data center somewhere. But the big cloud difference to that is that we are often using that technology in a more flexible way, in that we can, when dealing with third-party providers, add resources, change resources as we need them for our business. Next slide, please. Okay, on-demand delivery, database storage applications. So here's Amazon's definition of things. And of course, they're going to have a bit of a bias as to where they want to go. But they're big enough and important enough for me to include that definition for you as well. And they had to make sure they have to throw in that pay-as-you-go pricing, because if you are having somebody else run that cloud for you, yes, you're saving yourself some money internally for your own IT infrastructure, but somebody has to provide those services. Again, what Amazon's argument is, well, you can do so flexibly as your business needs increase and decrease. Especially right now, if you're looking at businesses that are having to scale back, if they're in the cloud, they can relatively easily do that if they've got things set up properly. Next slide, please. So there are three models that are typically discussed, and those are SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS. Software as a service is computer programs that are primarily stored on and run from internet-based servers. I'll talk about that in just a second. Platform as a service allows users to run programs, test those programs, implement those programs, update those programs as the IT infrastructure makes that available to them. And IaaS, or infrastructure as a service, provides the basic building blocks, and that's where your Amazon Web Services, for example, comes in, where you can basically have a complete IT setup, in a bit more of a layman's term, available via the cloud that somebody else manages for you, and of course that you then as an organization pay for. Next slide. So some examples of software as a service are, as we're using right now, Zoom, okay, communication tools, Microsoft Teams. From an academic side, Canvas is very much a cloud-based application. Gmail certainly has been for quite some time. And then Office productivity apps such as Microsoft Office 365. And Yes, you're giving up some control when you're not installing things locally necessarily, but you know, the good part is the updating happens in the background. The bad part is, yeah, if your internet goes down, then you've got some issues. But of course, these days we've got pretty solid connections. Certainly here in the urban areas, I know that my colleagues and friends in the rural areas don't necessarily rely on that. That's why some of those technologies haven't quite as quickly been adopted in, say, up in the what we call the far north, in very far northern California. Next slide, please. Cloud storage is what a lot of us have been using as a Google Drive, for example, or as a Dropbox, where we store things not on our devices, but in a location that is then centrally located, typically in a virtual environment where those third parties that are hosting can then increase and decrease. Oftentimes we have control over that space as well. What's nice about the cloud is it's accessible from multiple different locations and with multiple devices. Next slide. So the way that's typically implemented, many of you guys have your OneDrive on the Microsoft world, or your Google Drive in a folder on your computer. And usually they will tease you with making some resources available to you for free. It's 15 gigs on Google Drive, for example, or you can pay. I recently got rid of my Carbonite backup and went all the way to Google Drive, and it's going to cost me $100 a year for 2 gigabytes online, and that's for me gonna be enough to get started. I'm sorry, did I say gigabytes? Moving on. And here's the big advantage, right? Whatever you store in your Google Drive from your PC at home is also available on your laptop as you move around, is also available on your mobile device if you synchronize properly. And that's the big advantage of cloud storage. Again, that's where you and I deal with the cloud as users. For organizations that deal with infrastructure, again, you've got one thing that's stored centrally, your accounts, um, your tokens, if you will, to connect to other devices, all managed not on a server that's sitting in your data center or sent into your organization, but sitting out accessible to where your users are, which means these days most anywhere. Next slide, please. All right. Cloud backup, a couple different options. Again, that's also there. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about it because, again, with cloud storage, that almost obviates itself. Certainly within organizations, that's still an alternative. Next. All right. So the benefits of software as a service, such as Google Drive, again, you can view and edit files from most computing devices that you own. You can have multiple users collaborate, and you can go back to previous versions of files, not that you couldn't on a server environment in your organization, but more easily so with a cloud environment. Next slide, please. Platform as a service. Benefits, you only pay for IT sources when they're needed. Disadvantages, um, the costs can run up if you're not careful. Ask the folks at Amazon. Next slide. For the infrastructure, and here's where that true growth opportunity exists. So if you're a business right now that's providing services necessary for organizations, that's a good thing because you can relatively easily purchase new devices that are virtualized from your cloud service provider. And if things are bad for you right now, you can shrink, and that's where the cloud is helpful as well. Next slide, please. Last item that I've got on here is the idea of control, right? If things aren't on your local device, you're kind of giving up control because all you have really is a copy on your local device. But I would encourage you to consider how easily is it for you to lose a cell phone? And the answer is very easy. So if things are in the cloud, that anything that's stored on the cell phone is gone. If it's stored in the cloud, you still have it. You just need to make sure that you set up the security infrastructure to disconnect your lost device. Next slide. I'll have one of our panelists talk about the security component a little bit more detail later, but as I just mentioned, the cloud has some advantages there. Though I learned something from Martin Holtzty later on, I'll ask him during the panel. So what's your current weather forecast? Is it, next item please. Go and just click through these. There you go. Is it sunny, which means you're not using the cloud much? Is it partly cloudy? And that's probably many of us that are using some cloud technologies, but not a lot. Or going to the next one, mostly cloudy, where you're able to do business even when you're away from the physical office. And you know, if you're a believer, then you can go that way. I'm not going to take time for questions at this point in time. Well, I'd rather have our industry partners talk. But just before we get started with Joseph Taylor from Sac State here, my forecast is changing a little bit. My last day as your regional director is June 30th of this year. I will be returning to my full-time teaching assignment at Cosumnes River College starting in the spring. I've actually got a sabbatical in the fall where I'll be going back to school myself. And I will be learning lots from the folks at WASC about Cisco, and especially Cisco security and IoT security, so that I can contribute that back into my classroom to my students. So thanks for the great moments over the last 2.5 years. But I'm looking forward to spending more time with my students again, starting in the spring. The regional director position will remain with CRC in Los Rios, and look for that job opening to show up once the situation stabilizes a little bit. I let them know early, but obviously with the current situation, things are being held back. So if the position is posted, I'll send an email out as well and let you know and please contact me if you're interested. All right, moving right along. I'm already 3 minutes over, so Joseph Taylor is our next speaker. Joseph is the chair of the Information Systems and Business Analytics Department at Cal State Sacramento, and he will talk about their new programs. Joe, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can. I hope everybody else can as well. Good morning.
Good morning. So, Marcus, thanks for allowing me some time to talk with everyone today. I'm really looking forward to sharing a few of the things that we've got new and changing here at Sac State in regards to our information systems and business analytics education. What I'm going to go through, and if you can go to the next slide, please. First off, well, why are we making some changes into our programs? And what we're really trying to do is prepare for that next generation of, go back up, I'm still talking about that one. What we're trying to do is prepare for that next generation of IT worker. I'm fairly new to academia myself, was in industry for almost 20 years before, and I know how important it is to make sure that we are providing the right types of skills at the right time. So there's really 3 big reasons behind why we're shifting. First off, we want to improve our speed to graduation. One of the challenges that we have in our classes, and I'm sure you have in the community college in K-12 as well, is that a lot of our students don't know what they don't know. They might be first generation college students. They don't come from families with extensive IT professional background. And so what we've been looking at is how do we speed up graduation, and how do we reduce the number of prerequisites and dependencies so that students can learn what they like in tech before they need to specialize in something. Next, we're spending a lot of time focusing on workforce preparation. So that's how do we make sure that we're covering the right types of skills in our classes? How do we partner with industry, partner with local academia, the community college network, the high school networks, to make sure that we are covering the material that is really of value in the marketplace. And we also try and heavily use our student clubs. Our student clubs bring in outside companies on a weekly basis, not currently, but during a regular semester on a weekly basis, to talk about internships, to talk about career paths, to help our students understand what options are available to them. And we're really trying to focus a lot on community engagement. We're growing our programs, we're growing our enrollment. That means that there's more opportunities to partner with community colleges, to partner with K-12, as well as external companies. We've got more classes, there's more opportunities. If you want to And if you've got a master's degree, you can apply to teach as an adjunct teacher to come in and take over a class to help us support our growing curriculum and bring your real world expertise, your practical skills to our students in the classroom. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, so I've got something new, something improved, and something that's coming soon. So from a new standpoint, I'm pleased to announce that starting this fall, we will have a new concentration within the College of Business that's technically oriented, that will be focused on business analytics. So what this new concentration will entail will be the same classes that were necessary and continue to be necessary to become a business major. You need to cover the business core around accounting, finance, etc., and the business prereqs around accounting and finance, and then the business core where you'll take marketing classes, supply chain classes, to give students a broad-based understanding of what's necessary to work in an industry. What are the key functions that take place in an industry? Within our new concentration, there will be 3 required classes. The first will be around SQL and data visualization. So how do we manage, how to prepare data? How do we tell stories with data? The second will be around management science. So more statistical methods for dealing with hypotheses, for controlled methods like regression. We'll also have data mining. So how do we deal with some of the free-form type data analysis that will be particularly important when we start to have large-scale adoption of the Internet of Things. So we're trying to make sure that all of the students in this concentration get a solid grounding in some of the types of analysis that need to be done. After that, they'll have a series of electives that they can take. These electives fall across all different business domains, supply chain, HR, more technical domains. The beauty of this particular structure is that if you have a student that comes in and they know that they're curious about data, they're curious about how to learn things, but they don't know if they're interested in marketing or in finance, or they just don't know enough about those domains, they don't need to decide what types of electives to take until they've taken some of these core classes. So they can see what they're really interested in, what industries appeal to them. And by changing the way that we set up our prerequisites, we let students discover more about what their interests are before they have to commit to any particular discipline. And we really hope that's going to help our students, particularly our first generation students or students coming from underrepresented groups that might not have the same personal network to help give them mentoring, to learn and grow within the program. So these elective classes will come from, as I said, a variety of disciplines. Some will be more technical, and some of those technical classes, such as Intro to Programming, can be completed at the community college level. But it will prepare our students for a variety of places to work. You can go to the next slide. So in the IS concentration, we have made some changes to improve it. First off, we've tweaked some of our our prerequisites so we can make it easier for students to graduate on time. Second, we have made security, IT security, one of the requirements for getting an MIS degree at Sac State. As a result, we've removed one of the programming classes as a requirement and made it an elective. What we're seeing is many of our students are still pursuing programming-based careers, but we're seeing more go into project management, business analyst type roles. And so now we have a collection of electives that will allow students to pursue a number of different career paths within the IT sector. And we help them understand that as they begin to lay out their graduation timeline. What this means is that if some of your students are interested in programming but don't want to study programming heavily, they're just more in technology in general, that this gives you the opportunity to let those students know that there is more than just programming in technical careers. And we help them prepare for business analyst type roles, for systems analyst type roles, as well as developer roles. And we can go to the next slide. So also I wanted to announce that coming soon, we will be launching a Master's of Science in Business Analytics. Theoretically, that's supposed to launch a year from this fall. I would say that while the curriculum has been submitted, with the current disruption, we're not as sure how quickly all the committees will be approving material, so that could be delayed, but we are currently on track for that as far as we know. What this master's program will allow you to do is, and it will be we're looking to help people transition to some of these new skills that are required when we get to the big data world, particularly as it will relate to Internet of Things. As more companies collect more data through Internet of Things, how do we help them create value out of that? So our curriculum will have required classes around data management, visualization, more on data modeling and machine learning for some of the skills that we know will be important as we move to a more IoT data-centric world. And then again, we'll have elective classes baked in that if you want to specialize in healthcare or marketing or finance, that you will be able to take additional classes specific to your domain to develop the right types of methods to be successful in any industry. So we're really looking forward to this program. It's something that the economic forecasts that we commissioned as part of pulling this together say there'll be about 1,000 jobs a year in the Sacramento area that are looking for someone with a master's degree. So we're very excited for this. Like I said, coming soon. So we can go to the next slide. This is just meant to give you a quick update on what we have going on. If you've got further questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to reach out to me directly. Really looking forward to partnering with our local community on making these projects successful, both with industry partners as well as education partners. So thank you very much for your time. Thanks for having me on the agenda, Marcus. And I believe I'm out of it, so I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you so very, very much, Joseph, for that update. As again, an MIS grad and longer ago than I care to admit, some great updates to that MIS concentration and a slight, you know, I guess renamer with the information systems piece for your department as well. But boy, what a nice opportunity. And yes, I would encourage you to collaborate with the community colleges, even for the masters. So I know some of the prerequisite kind of courses, you didn't mention them as courses, you were like in interests. We might be able to help you at the community college level with some courses that may then fit for your master's folks as preparatory work as well. But I think that's those are some great updates. Do we have any quick questions for Joseph? If we do, go ahead and type them into the chat. And that's how we're going to do questions, by the way. So Isabel is going to monitor the chat as I'm doing as well, as much as I can. But as questions develop also for our panel, and that's what we're going to move on to then here in a minute. Let's see, I've got one question for Joseph in the chat. What kind of mentoring do you have for special populations? You want to address that real quickly, Joseph?
Sure. What we're really trying to do is we've got infrastructure within the College of Business specifically around first generation and a variety of, well, basically every underrepresented group. So we're trying to leverage that infrastructure as much as possible. But on top of that, within our clubs, and as we begin to launch these degrees over the summer, I'll be publishing a lot more on this in LinkedIn and other outlets. We have one of the most diverse campuses in the country at Sac State. It's a huge advantage that we have. And the peer-to-peer student mentoring, particularly with recently graduated alumni, we've found great success with. Because recent graduated alumni not only have a lot of affinity with the school, but they also will know what the students are going through. They know what they're going through right now because they relate to them. And so I mentioned those clubs that bring in outside companies every week to talk about internships and job paths. Basically, all of those companies will bring at least one or two recent alumni. Perfect. So that they can build those relationships.
Thank you. Yes, I was part of that club way back when I was a student as well, and I can only echo that. Now we need to find a way to interface, hopefully, maybe with some of the programs at the community colleges, just as well as they're doing on the computer science side. So thanks again very much.
Marcus, if I can add one thing on that.
Yeah.
We have started conversations with the club alumni, although things got a little sideways because of this coronavirus. But to look for opportunities to send some of our recent alumni to the community colleges as well, to talk to your students. We've got a lot of alumni who have expressed interest in doing so. And so that's certainly something that I'll look to all those that are here on the meeting to help support as we move into next year.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Once again, thank you very much. I wish we could like applaud. That's one thing. I was like, okay, how do we thank our speakers and panelists? But I guess I'll do it for everybody else. Thanks for the great information, and stay in touch, Joseph. Much appreciated. All right, that takes us to the next item in our agenda, and that is our industry panel. And we've got 4 folks who have been very kind to agree to give up their time, and they're all here. And if you're here in one of the panelists, go ahead and please enable your video if you haven't already. But allow me to quickly introduce in alphabetical order, and then I'll give them a chance to introduce themselves. Kevin Flash, who is the Dean of Learning Resources at Sacramento City College. Richard Gillespie, who is the Branch Chief for Cloud Infrastructure and Compute and Storage Services for the California Department of Technology. Martin Holste, the CTO for Cloud for FireEye at Mandiant. And Jamal Price, who is the Chief Cloud and Security Architect for the California Department of Technology as well. I need to thank Brenda Bridges-Cruz for sending me 2 folks. That's absolutely awesome with different areas of focus. So please help me welcome the panel, and I will go through in that alphabetical order and let everybody introduce themselves real quickly. And if you would, while you're doing that, please outline the primary tasks that you perform in your job. And we can move to the next slide there, please. Any academic degrees or industry certs that you may hold, and a brief summary of your career path to where you are today. Kevin.
Okay, thank you, Marcus. I'm Kevin Flash, the Dean of Learning Resources from Sac City College. And really what I'm doing today is looking at a couple of things. Number one, how we help our students engage in the learning processes at Sacramento City College. I'm also engaged with a number of activities looking at lowering the cost of education to our students in various sectors. So I'm involved with open educational resources, allowing students to be in that environment to reduce the cost of attendance there, as well as then looking at our students in the terms of digital inclusion. How can they participate, especially our disproportionately impacted students, first generation students, often have times hard with getting computing devices and getting connectivity to their learning environment, to Canvas and other tools that they need. So that's really where my focus is today, to be able to bring our students in, get them on the base, to be able to have an environment where they can learn and they can thrive. And in that capacity, my background does come, I have a bachelor's degree in computer information science from The Ohio State University. I worked in industry, some private, some public sectors for about 30 years, including Abbott Laboratories, Dresser Industries, International Billing Systems. I've also worked a little bit in the public sector with the Department of Managed Healthcare in the state of California. But really my heart came into having worked at Ohio State and the University of California in Davis, and now the Los Rios Community Colleges, really helping them and helping students learn. I went back and got my master's degree in educational policy and leadership from Sacramento State a few years ago, which allowed me then to transition into being an instructional dean at Sacramento City College. And that's kind of briefly where I'm at today here. Glad to participate.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate it very much, Kevin. Thanks for the intro. Richard Gillespie.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Richard Gillespie. I'm a branch chief over at the California Department of Technology. And my branch is the Cloud Compute and Storage branch. So basically, I'm responsible for all of the cloud services, cloud contract for the state of California, as well as the hypervisor, VMware, managed services environment, and storage within the CDT data center. I've been there for about 1.5 years. Prior to that, I was the enterprise infrastructure manager over at the Office of Statewide Health Plan Development for about 3 years. And then prior to that, I was all private industry. So I worked private industry for about 20+ years. The vast majority of that was in consulting, IT consulting. And actually for 11 years before coming to the state, I owned my own IT consulting company here in Sacramento. So I have a bachelor's in IT, specializing in web management. I'm currently going through my MPA program. So it's tough at this point trying to go through that and do everything that I do, but it's going to be worth it. And then I have a number of industry certifications, ITIL, MCSE, CCNA. I think they're all very old though. I don't even know if they're even still valid, but I have them there. I haven't utilized them in a while. So really my day-to-day activity is to oversee, like I said, we have a cloud contract that all the departments and agencies utilize to purchase cloud services for the state of California. My responsibility is to oversee that, to manage that, as well as we have a very large VMware hypervisor infrastructure for managed services, as well as self-provision services within the data center. That if departments or agencies need resources, they can come to us. It's essentially, part of that is our private cloud. And then also a new thing that started since I've been there, and Jamal will speak in a minute, he's on my team, is this cloud services team where we are developing new services and processes for state departments and agencies to be able to leverage to utilize public cloud resources.
All right, cool. I know getting that data out there is a big deal for a governor right now there as well. So
yeah.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much. Martin Holstein, before you start, Martin, I need to add that we had you signed up as a panelist, and I was on an InfraGard national presentation last week, and was thrilled to see that you were the main speaker to talk about cloud security. So good to have you on board this morning.
Thanks.
Martin.
Yeah, glad you can make it. I had a great time doing the InfraGard thing, and it was great to have such a large audience, and the questions were amazing. So really had a great time doing it. Good experience, and hopefully everybody got something out of it. So I'm CTO for cloud for FireEye, and that has meant a lot of things over the last few years for that. So I talked to tons and tons of customers about what they're doing in the cloud as sort of an advisor for them. Help with our own product strategy for how we go into cloud, and understanding, as we do a lot of our incident response that involves cloud, how to translate that into our products. I lead an engineering team that does some of our cloud work as well. So I'm kind of do a little bit of everything, which is a lot of fun for me. Prior to that, I did a lot of engineering work for the company. And then prior to that, for a long time, I led the incident response team for the state of Wisconsin for most of a decade. And I worked with the FBI a lot doing that. So really kind of cut my teeth on understanding security operations centers, incident response, all those things, pen testing. And then before that, I worked at the University of Wisconsin, where I built out the dorm networks pretty much from scratch, and along with captive portal systems and things like that before those were industry standards. So that was a lot of fun, and I really learned a lot about networking and just large scale online populations back then. That was the height of file sharing and things like that, where we didn't have enough bandwidth to go around. So it was interesting times, and a great time to be with the university back then. So I certainly know my way around the public sector, and last few years in the private sector as well. And it's been really interesting, and especially just seeing everyone's transition to cloud. Pretty much everyone is doing that at this point. About 95% of our customers are in the cloud to some extent, even if it's just something like Office 365 or G Suite. And that's become really fun to see how everyone goes in and to help them out.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thanks for being here. Last, certainly not least, Jamal with Department of Technology. Jamal Price, how are you this morning? And are you there, Jamal? You might have to unmute yourself. We cannot hear you, Jamal. Go ahead and, Isabel, can you see if Jamal's unmuted, please?
He should be unmuted now.
Okay. Try again,
Hello,
Jamal.
can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you. All right, good. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, no problem. Do you guys hear any feedback? Because I'm actually on the phone call and the video now, I believe. Or do I sound okay?
No, you sound okay. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so my name is Jamal Price, and I work with the California Department of Technology alongside Richard Gillespie on the call. He pretty much summed up what it is that we do for the state of California. I'm the person responsible for actually designing cloud architecture for different workloads that run in the Department of Technology and also across the state of California. So A little bit about my background. I have a bachelor's degree in computer science, a bachelor's degree in information system security. I have a master's degree in management of information systems from Purdue University. Industry certifications, I currently hold a AWS Solutions Architect certification, CCNP, so I'm a Cisco certified networking professional, and I also have certifications in Microsoft and F5. And before, let me see, I work for the state now, I think right around 6 years. Before I worked for the state, I worked for Pearson VUE, which is a reputable education-based company. I worked there as a Windows and a Linux administrator for about 5 to 6 years. And then I joined the state after I completed my master's degree. And my first job was with the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. I worked there as a senior network engineer. Left there after about 3 years and went to join the Department of Consumer Affairs to help them with some high-profile projects that they needed to get off the ground. And then after that, I joined the California Department of Technology. I started in the Information Security Division, worked there for about 1.5 years, and then I moved over to the cloud team and joined Richard. So.
Wow. Thank you very much. And obviously, what a wealth of background, both the private and public sectors. So let's get to the juice of why we're here, which is exploring cloud computing skills for tomorrow's IT professionals. So when we talk about the cloud, here's our second question. Different aspects of cloud computing may come to mind for individuals to interface with the cloud at different levels. So based on your roles and where you are, please define the skills that you would expect individuals to have before you hire them for an entry-level position on your organization's cloud-related teams. And what additional skills would those individuals need then to be able to advance to a mid-level cloud-related position? And I'll have Richard start and move on from there. Go ahead, please.
So for me and my role and my perspective, for an entry-level cloud engineer, honestly, I'm just looking for somebody that is familiar with the different CSPs, the different cloud providers, what differentiates them, what one has over the other, and also the ability to just be able to deploy and manage basic resources out there, VMs, storage, those kind of things. I think also it's important to have somebody that is flexible and agile, because it's a much different environment than it has been in the past, where you have servers in a data center and this is, everything is there and this is just the environment. Now things change so rapidly that I want to ensure that I have somebody that is eager to learn and is teachable. That's incredibly important. Somebody that can kind of utilize this new environment to develop creative solutions rather than kind of be locked in a box the way historically things have been. To advance to a mid-level cloud engineer, I think automation and orchestration are huge. I think at some point everything's going to be automated, everything's going to be scripted. So the ability to be able to do automation and scripting is big. The security, somebody that has a concept of the new security requirements in the cloud as opposed to on-premise is going to be a big thing. Somebody that understands the kind of intricacies of how things connect together. What are the dependencies in the cloud for different resources to each other? And then another big thing for me is the ability for people to be able to communicate with non-technical people. So I think the ability to be able to develop technical solutions is huge, is incredibly important, but really to be able to take that to the next level is to be able to serve the business. And how do I take this proposed solution and relate it to the business and what people are really looking for? Because business drives technology. And so for us to be able to do that is really, I think, critical.
Thank you. Yeah, for sure. You mentioned security, Martin. I know that that's your area of expertise. So where do you see folks with what skill sets are you looking for?
Well, it's interesting. So cloud generally makes everything a whole lot easier than really anything that happens on-prem, which is great news. The problem is that most people kind of need to know both. So almost every organization has some amount of things on-prem and some in cloud, even if they're mostly in cloud or mostly on-prem. And that means that all the cloud stuff is net new. And so while it is a lot easier to understand both from a security perspective and ops and engineering, it's additional on top of all the other things that I have to worry about and remember. And then the other thing is that cloud in general changes significantly about every 6 months, especially if you look across the major three cloud providers being AWS and Google Cloud and Microsoft Azure. There's so much that's different that anything you knew 6 months ago is probably still relevant, but there's a lot more that you have to know in addition to that. And then things that are maybe 2 years old are not relevant at all anymore. So there's definitely sort of a churn of information, and it's really important to be current. So when I look to hire, and I just had a few new people added to my team, I didn't care whatsoever about what cloud experience they have, because generally you can get up and running on cloud infrastructure in just a few weeks with some Googling and it's just some trial and error. The concepts themselves aren't too bad, but the key is that you need a pretty solid foundation in at least computer science. So I would expect them to have some level of Python scripting or Java or something like that. And if you have that level, then you're going to be just fine on cloud. The rest of it is kind of details that you have to learn. So I'm not super worried about exactly which clouds they know or anything like that. It should only take really a few minutes to figure out some of the newer stuff, at least enough to play around with. And then we can roll out entire applications in 6 weeks with a lot of the things that we do. And I will say part of that is I'm really a big evangelist of serverless computing. So not using any servers, entirely services from the clouds, such as AWS Lambda or function as a service. And when you start to do that and use a lot of the platform as a service, a ton of things go away. The code is inherently more secure, but more importantly, you can roll it out really, really quickly, and it scales almost infinitely. And so when you start to develop that way to begin with, it really cuts down the mistakes you can make and just a lot of the noise or things that aren't directly relevant to the business, and lets you focus on really specific business logic, which is great from a security perspective because there's just fewer mistakes to make, and great from just an engineering perspective because there's a lot less code to write. So that's kind of my number one recommendation for people as they go into cloud, is to do more and more on the serverless side. And the one other detail I'll put out there is that from time to time we hear people weigh that against the chance of quote unquote vendor lock-in, where they say, well, we use the cloud provider services, now we're stuck with them. And I have sort of two reactions to that. One is that that's generally fine. You're not going to be migrating code from cloud provider to cloud provider every month anyway. And secondly, if you design the code right, that's really not an issue. Porting code that was properly written from an Azure function as a service to an Amazon Lambda is a pretty small endeavor if properly architected. And generally speaking, lock-in is not a problem. So compared to the massive benefits you get for doing it, both from a security perspective and engineering, that really can make the difference in an organization to not just do the sort of the simple lift and shift where they're taking virtual machines that they ran on-prem and then moving them into the cloud, but by really starting from scratch and saying, what is it we're trying to do as a business with this code, and then implementing that. So that's my big recommendation overall.
Okay, thank you. And just to quickly follow up, you mentioned computer science, but anything in information systems or IT would probably also be helpful when it comes to degrees?
I didn't mention my degree. My degree is in creative writing. My degree is in English. I think being curious and persistent is a lot more important than even IQ or experience. Because cloud moves so quickly, but in general, I'll take an employee that just works hard and is curious about things over someone with a ton of experience any day of the week. That's really what it comes down to in tech, is being curious and putting in the effort to learn versus saying, well, these are the things that I already know, and here's the documents to prove it.
Yeah, thank you. Jamal, lots of skills that have already been mentioned since you're dealing specifically with cloud. Anything that you can add at this point in time?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hello. Yes, you can hear me. Okay. So I'm just going to echo everything that I've heard pretty much before. Generally, we look for people that have well-rounded skills. We don't really look for specialization in any specific area, but it's nice to have someone that has some experience working across platforms, like for example in a Windows and Linux environment. somebody who has a basic understanding, not a high-level understanding of computer networking, because there are networking concepts that come into play. Information system security, as Richard mentioned, we look for people that have just some basic scripting knowledge. And then also anyone who has skills in coding, who understands containerization, like how to containerize applications or run serverless functions, is somebody that we really target. So, and then there's also the non-technical components that we look for that Richard spoke to as well. Interpersonal skills, we look for people who can collaborate and work across teams, because we are involved with a number of different business units, and they all have different requirements, and trying to find all those requirements and bring them together into a cohesive type of a design and strategy is really important. So we look for that, and we also look for people that have like the ability to influence positively inside the organization. And then also people who can grasp and have an understanding for the business, that has the competency and the ability and the aptitude to understand business and business value and how our systems align with that value.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Speaking of value, Kevin, for the educational sector, you're kind of looking at it from a more applied sense than your fellow panelists. Anything specific that you are looking for when you are hiring folks for employment at Sacramento City College?
Yeah, and I think one of the things we do look at, and one of our high points, is taking some of our students and then giving them their first experience with our student technology help desk. And one of the biggest values we see there is them being able to translate some of the technology things, especially related to the cloud, to the students. So one of the biggest challenges is, how do I actually connect to an internet connection? How is that different from my phone than my desktop? And so we're finding the communication skills and the ability to look and translate technology in a way that really is applicable to a various set of different students is very, very valuable to them. And then to underscore too, the ability to teamwork, to hand off, to be able to say, hey, I've got this person, they have this need, can you help them out, is also very valuable for them to have and service our students.
Great. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's interesting. We're going back to that's those communication skills, right? To working with those customers, that service idea for folks in ICT. Thank you. Moving on to the next question. It's one thing to hire folks. It's another to to retain. So can you speak to any initiatives that your organization has implemented to recruit and to keep cloud-related talent? Are those working, those initiatives? And have you, I know Kevin just mentioned it, work-based learning, have you considered it? Obviously, such as internships and apprenticeships to help you attract tech talent. So Kevin, I'll start with you this time. Are you able to hang on to many of these students then that you're employing while they're in school, or do they disappear on you?
Well, and kind of both. We are able to hang on to them. So good. In the most cases, we have people that are engaged. They have maybe to have taken 1 or 2 semesters of some CIS or computer classes, and then they're introduced to us. We understand they have some technical skills, and we can get them working with other students there. Our retention is pretty good, but then sadly to say, or well to say, we're able then to have them transfer to a UC or CSU. So that actually is a very positive outcome. They have things that they're looking for and aspirations they have. And so we give them some footing, some ground, and are able to then pass them along. So overall, I think the engagement with them is pretty good. Being able to keep them engaged and help mentor them and coach them and keep them connected. Some of them do then participate, I know Sac State mentioned this earlier, to some of our games clubs. So it gets them exposure and connectivity to other students and begin to build their network of other relationships that they have.
Thank you. Yeah, for sure. Both Martin and Richard mentioned the need for the ability to change. Jamal, since you're closer to it than Richard from the sounds of it, how do you ensure that the people you hire are able to deal with change, and as things are changing, how do you keep those folks interested in sticking around with your company? Because obviously, if they've got some great cloud skills, they're on the market for others as well. What do you guys do at Department of Technology, Jamal? We cannot currently hear you, Jamal. Go ahead and unmute, please.
Can you hear me now?
There you go. Go ahead.
Okay, there you go. Okay, so we work in the public sector, so it's a little bit different there. Change in public sector organizations is a little bit more of a challenge than it is, I think, in the private industry where things are a lot more fluid, right? So for us, it's a continuous teaching process, keeping people in the loop, keeping people challenged, giving them new opportunities, and creating environments where we don't use fear. We don't embrace fear. Rather, we embrace people learning and making mistakes and like risk-based mistakes, and giving them an opportunity to learn and to grow. And we also put together some cloud skills training courses that we offer at our organization, but those are specifically restricted to CDT. Richard is generally the person that handles most of the recruitment and those types of issues, so he'll be able to speak more to that.
Okay, thank you very much. Then Richard, since Jamal put you on the spot, how do you keep folks?
Well, it's tough because, I mean, to be honest with you, working for the state and recruiting for the state and public service, you're having to compete with private industry. And, you know, right now, everything's great. Well, not this exact moment, but over the past several years, things have been great with private industry. So it's very hard for us to compete with, you know, I'll just say it, the salaries are obviously better in private industry. The opportunity to do other things is a little better in private industry. So we really we struggle in that area. So what we do is we have other things, you know, we can offer telework and things like that. I've been to some of the engineering department job fairs at Sac State trying to recruit people and get people on. But it's a very tough challenge for the state. But it's all cyclical too. So eventually the economy will turn and people will run to the safety of the state. So that's just the nature of the beast. That's how it works. We haven't really talked much about interns or apprentice. I would love to be able to do that, especially being out at the engineering job fair at Sac State. There's a lot of very smart, eager individuals out there that I think that would be a great role to be able to transition them into an intern or apprenticeship to be able to do that. And that hasn't really happened up to this point. Yeah, see, so as far as recruiting people for the state, we're limited on what we can do. I can go to the job fairs, but the hiring process and recruitment process is extremely defined. So again, we're pretty limited. Jamal touched on some of the training that we do with the brown bag lunches and stuff like that. But one thing that we're doing also internally to keep people that we already have on board is the biggest challenge that we're having with cloud computing and cloud technology and the adoption of it within the state, especially CDT, it's not technical. The issues aren't technical, it's the people, it's cultural. And so what we're doing is we have created a matrix team. So what we have is we have people from all various service areas that aren't necessarily directly related to the cloud that are working in a group that Jamal manages, that they're getting exposure to this. We're leveraging their existing skill sets, kind of augmenting that with other newer technologies with the hope that they will be on board. Then they will take that information back to their current teams and kind of motivate other people to participate or to want to participate. So that's how we're doing it. It's really a tough culture to try and change, but I feel like over the past year and a half, me and Jamal working together, we've made a lot of progress.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Yeah, that's government, obviously a different speed from the sounds of it, different needs. Martin, for the private industry, do you have time to spend much on keeping folks trained? Do you have time to take on interns or apprentices?
Oh yeah, we do. We have an extensive intern program at FireEye, and we've had that for over 10 years, I think. So we do a lot with that. It's a great recruiting tool, and really important for making sure we're have a pulse for what the inbound talent looks like. For keeping cloud-related talent, I mean, the number one thing to me is making sure people are having fun with what they're working on. And what I have found is that the thing that people get the most discouraged with is when they're told they can't use cloud technology. It's very rare that someone says they don't want to. They're almost always curious about learning how to do it, or just doing some. It goes under the professional development umbrella, but it's really more than that. It's just someone wanting to explore and learn new things. And almost universally, when given the opportunity, engineering and ops will really latch on to that. And so what I have found, and this has really changed for the better in our business in the last few years, is just this really embracing of letting people work on what they want to work on cloud projects versus. I mean, it wasn't that long ago we had this big, I talked about the vendor lock-in debate earlier, and we had that in the company a few years ago, and it was really detrimental to getting things done because everyone was scared to commit to anything. And that meant that everything had to be done in an agnostic way and so on and so forth. And that really impeded our progress. I mean, now we're to the point where if someone has a pretty well thought out plan for what they're trying to accomplish, just sort of a tabletop or engineering requirements, you should be able to go, you should be able to get a working prototype within 2 weeks of almost anything if you're using, cloud services. All the heavy lifting is done for you. So it's really just trying to imagine what you're trying to do with it. And that applies to, advanced projects with AI and machine learning. There's a lot of things you can leverage that are already done. So there's kind of two struggles to that. One is making sure that people are thinking about using that new tech and being allowed to do that. And then the second is really holding people to those new standards and assuming that a project should be done within 2 to 3 months and shipped. And that's completely new our pedigree as a company is based in appliances, shipping appliances, which take, a lot longer to build and test and do all those things. And now we're really a cloud company. And we, over the last few years had to transition our expectations to saying, look, if you've got an idea, we should be able to get that idea into the market in a few months. And, that's at any scale, at any, geography. So if we need to sell it in Europe with GDPR and those kinds of things, or whether it's in the healthcare sector and HIPAA requirements, all those things, it shouldn't really matter. Cloud can really take care of all that for you. And we do a lot of business in the federal government in which things need to be FedRAMPed. And that's another area where cloud really helps because the cloud providers themselves, their infrastructure is already vetted. And so that gives you a pretty good shortcut into getting a lot of those other requirements met. So just really thinking and planning for that strategically is really that kind of final step for any businesses that go into cloud and trying to understand how to account for it and plan for it. And once they are kind of past that first introductory level of maturity, to really expect more from their people to get more things done. And from a talent perspective, what you find is that really increases job satisfaction because instead of, churning away at the same thing over and over, you're on to the next project after, just a month or two. And that keeps people fresh. It keeps people, engaged, and that goes a long way.
Thank you. I think we answered question number 4 relatively well. Academic degrees. Maybe a 5-second answer from maybe one or two of you. Somebody with an associate's degree rather than a 4-year degree, do they have a chance?
Yes.
Richard says yes. Martin?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think there's the background is very helpful. As I said before, having a solid fundamentals in computer science is great. So I would prefer the 4-year to 2-year, but that said, any candidate that comes in and can demonstrate an aptitude and a hunger for knowledge is going to excel. And they can do even better if they have those fundamentals, but those can be picked up over time. So certainly don't discriminate on any of the degrees, but definitely prefer the 4-year just for those fundamentals.
All right, thank you. Final question, really quick, and we've got 1 minute left, but I'll gladly take an extra minute or two. Where do we go from here? Where are we going to be in 2025? And as Martin kind of implied, well, things change every few months. So how do we know, right? But as educators, we're looking at getting our students ready for a career over the next several years of education. And besides that, that eagerness to learn, that ability to change, maybe some business background, what are some of the cloud-related skills that you expect to be out there over the next several years that we as academicians can prepare our students for? Let me start with Martin.
Sure. So, I mean, 5 years is an absolute eternity in cloud. I consider 18 months an eternity. That's 3 turnovers, basically, of new features. Not to say that everything you learn in that time is no longer valuable. And so that's why, I think from an education perspective, I talked about those fundamentals and having, I mentioned my English degree, and that has served me really well because English is about finding themes within literature. And being able to spot themes with what you're working on is really important. Now, there are tactical things that are good. So a 2-year degree can still be helpful. And having, the latest knowledge on certain things is definitely good because, it gives you a little bit of a quick start. So I would kind of go both routes, that you want those sort of conceptual, that conceptual education that tells you about how systems work together, economics, things like that. Fluid dynamics, all those things apply. The physics doesn't change, right? It's just sort of where that gets applied. And then, more tactically, like I said, learning a specific cloud or whatever can definitely help, and it will shorten the time it takes to get up and running. But that's something you can learn on the job if it's, conducive to the employer.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. Thank you. So change. Jamal, your thought on the ability to change. You're still muted. Jamal, we cannot hear you. Go ahead and there you go.
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. So 2025, yeah, like Martin mentioned, that's an eternity. I do see that a lot of the functions that are actually running inside of like a traditional data center, I think most of I'd say 75 to 80% of those will be running in the public cloud space. There'll be a small footprint on-prem. And then I think the focus will shift to AI, to IoT, to machine learning. I think that's really the path forward. Right now, we're spending a lot of time automating all of our the mundane processes that we do, trying to eliminate the need to, configure a server, or we for the most part have that all automated now. So now we shift our focus to coding and understanding how to build serverless functions. How to manage containers, how to move containers from an on-prem environment to a public cloud type of a setting. So that's where I see the direction going.
Thank you. Kevin, thoughts? Keep it to 15 seconds if you can, please. We're trying to finish up.
And what we're really doing is really looking at opening up and keeping students interested all the way from the K through 12 into the community colleges, into the CSUs and UCs. There's a lot of things coming up like the 7.5K code challenge that we hope to do through this next year to keep those people interested, keep their creativity and engagement open, regardless, of gender, regardless of, ethnic backgrounds, all these things. We just want to keep people excited about technology and engaged in it.
Thank you. Yeah, wise words. Richard, I'll have you have the last word.
Yeah, so real quick, I just have 2 things to kind of add on. I think over the next 5 years, and it's not, I know a lot of places are already doing this, but containers, microservices, those kind of things, those are just going to be normal. That's going to become the standard. To be able to quickly destroy and redeploy resources is going to be the standard. I also think that infrastructure is just going to be an afterthought. People are just going to expect the infrastructure to be there. There's not going to be a lot of focus on developing that. It's just going to be there and work. So.
For small businesses and large, Richard?
I think so. In the cloud, yeah, that's what the cloud provides you is infrastructure on demand. It's just there and it works.
And you think business of all sizes are gonna use it and are gonna go there?
I think they should. I think there's absolute value in doing that.
Yeah. All right. Gentlemen, this was very, very informative, and frankly, for somebody who's been teaching for a while, very thought-provoking also. Thank you very, very much for your expertise. There are a few questions, if you don't mind, in the chat. Maybe you can spend a couple of minutes answering some of those, but allow me to say thank you on behalf of everybody who's attending for your time and for your expertise. Very much appreciated. I hope that we might be able to call on you again in a year or two with an update. But thank you again very much. Let me give the applause here on my end. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so let's move on then to the next to the last item, and that is the curriculum review. And we've only got a couple of short items to address, and I'll whichever one you want to bring up first, Isabel, is going to work for me, and we'll take a look at, well, what we have is two pieces. One is from American River College. And that is a server class that is kind of on the advanced side, high availability, it's just you know, I guess a question to industry partners who are here. This is the Windows Server infrastructure piece, virtualization. Though it's kind of interesting, we heard at this point in time that a lot of people are going to assume that infrastructure is going to be there. That said, and this class is new to district, we don't have it yet. Do any of our industry partners in the meantime think that this would be something that will be of value to students who are getting ready for an IT career? If anybody wants to chime in, would love to have any feedback from you. Go ahead and scroll down, Isabel, if you wouldn't mind, to some of the course content. And a little bit further, right there, that's a good one, the description. And if you could make a little, just a touch larger, maybe a 200% zoom, that would be helpful as well. There you go.
So this is Richard. I just have one quick thought.
Yes.
I know this focuses on, it talks about focusing on Hyper-V.
Yeah.
My thought is you would probably be better served focusing on VMware. I don't know what the decision was or anything besides behind Hyper-V, but VMware owns, you know, a huge percentage of the market. I think that's going to continue to grow. That would be my only 2 cents.
Yeah, it's, you know, the curriculum is by Microsoft, is made available to us, and it's frankly easy to because they maintain it for us as well. So that's one of the reasons that it's there. And with VMware, with the acquisition, there's been a bit of a dearth of support from that direction. So it does make it easier. So noted, and we'll pass it back to the colleague at American River College, Larry Dumas, who's implementing this class, certainly for consideration. And maybe, you know, it could just be that the description would then have, wouldn't necessarily specify the Hyper-V piece, but that would give us some flexibility. Again, the course is intended to help prepare students for the MCSE certification that is being renewed, by the way, for some of you who hadn't heard. Any other feedback on this? Okay, I haven't heard anybody say this course is worthless. If I hate to sound so harsh about it, but I'm assuming this is still going to benefit students as they learn about virtualization as they move on. So if any of our industry partners, if you want to, you know, separately let me know otherwise that this is really not a good idea, please do let us know. Otherwise, I want to commend Larry on putting this course forth. I think it's been a long time coming, certainly for the Los Rios district to have something like this. So, Harsh, did you want to say something real quick? Nope. Okay, all right. Thank you. Let's move on to the second item then. And this should be a relatively quick one. This is a certificate at Sacramento City College. And if we can move down to the actual course sequence that's offered there. Or actually, yeah, there you go, right there. This same certificate exists at American River College, and we're looking as a district to offer more of these certificates and degrees at multiple locations, so that especially in online education times, students aren't tied to one specific location. This should be a relatively easy one. Unless anybody has any objections, I'd like to make sure that our minutes show for this one as well that there were no major concerns and that we can approve this item. Again, it's already in place at American River College, and those programs, especially with Cosumnes River College now as well, there's a common grant for cybersecurity that is having those colleges collaborate. I think it makes a lot of sense to implement that that certificate. Again, it's not going to compete with one another. There's definitely a job need. Any concerns? All right, hearing none, let's consider this one approved as well. Thank you very much. I appreciate the industry feedback there especially as well. All right, last but not least, trying to use your time as efficiently as possible. And I said that we're absolutely going to finish this by 10:30. We do have some resources that I'd like to share and actually like to have some colleagues share who are out there, especially in times of working from home. And let me get Jared Amelong on board to talk about Nepris and Basecamp briefly. Go ahead, Jared.
Well, hello everyone. Great to be with you. Thank you to the panelists for the outstanding presentation. I really enjoyed the content shared today. I'm excited to share some resources, as Marcus mentioned. Maybe some specific actionable items that we can embrace as both educators and industry partners on the call today. Given the circumstances, we weren't able to meet face-to-face the educators in what we call a community of practice meeting that typically follows our advisory committee meetings. But we do have some resources to share with you. And a quick reminder, as a group we convened back in November, it was November 1st. And when we last met, the feedback from our educator group, community college faculty, K-12 teachers, there were some expressed wants and needs that I'm hoping that these resources will address. The first was an opportunity to continue to engage with one another. Twice a year is awesome to come together, but how can we continue the conversation? So we've got a resource for that. Second, there was a request to increase access to work-based learning. I've got a resource for that. And then lastly, there was a request for some type of hub or clearinghouse, digital location, a cloud-based solution for collaboration, for a repository of resources, announcements, calendar, etc. So our community of practice, we've got some solutions to roll out to you right now. With that said, here are the tools. Marcus mentioned first, the Sacramento County Office of Education has procured licenses for 20 educators in our region to utilize a tool called Nepris. Nepris is a cloud-based solution. It actually uses Zoom. We're doing that right now to connect industry partners with students and teachers in a classroom. Given the current distance learning context that we are all experiencing, it is actually a really awesome time to use Nepris to connect industry partners to classrooms. So teachers, we have, again, we've procured some licenses. There is a shortened URL on the screen here that I will also drop in the chat, and we will share out after this meeting to request your license. It's just a very simple Google form. I encourage you to submit a request. For our industry partners, we've put together a simple one-pager that describes how you can sign up on the Nepris platform, nepris.com, to connect with the classroom. That could be a classroom here in Sacramento. It could be anywhere around the country, truthfully. So we're really excited about the opportunity to bring guest speakers to classrooms, look at ongoing mentorships and virtual worksite tours. So this is an actionable item for us to kind of continue the conversation. The second piece that we're really excited to roll out is a virtual community of practice, a one-stop shop, if you will, for threaded collaboration, very low barrier to entry. It can land in your inbox if you'd like. A single one-stop shop for current announcements, a calendar of events, and then lastly, a collection of resources and files. I really hope we can get some cloud content posted and course-specific resources inside of this tool we call Basecamp. At the bottom of the screen, I've put a shortened URL that will allow you to sign up and access Basecamp now. And in the coming weeks, as we continue to practice distance learning, Basecamp will become a pretty popular resource, we hope. So please consider accessing Basecamp using that link. And again, I'll drop that in the notes. The last thing that I wanted to do today was express a huge thank you to Marcus. For the last 2.5 years, he's done a tremendous amount of work in our region to connect K-12 educators, community college faculty, and industry partners together. We're so appreciative of his work as a leader in the region, and we're even more thankful that Marcus is returning to the classroom to educate our future workforce in ICT careers. So Marcus, on behalf of the Sacramento County Office of Education and Valley Vision, your friends at the ICT sector team at the Chancellor's Office, we all thank you. You've done a tremendous job, and you're not going to get away easily. We look forward to continuing to collaborate with you over the years. So
thank you very much. And yes, I'll be around. Just because I won't be the regional director anymore, and that doesn't mean that I won't still continue to participate regionally as I really always have. And I look forward to continuing to collaborate because our students need that, and we need that to be most effective on behalf of our students. Thank you very much. All right. By the way, there was a question in the chat. Is all this information, are these slides going to be made available? And yes, they will be. So if you registered, obviously you did since you're on the call, we will send out the slides as one slide deck. We'll combine Jared's and the rest of the slides as well. So yes, you will have it. With it will come all of the links as well. So yes, absolutely. Last but not least, certainly not least, we've got our friends for the ACM, both the Sacramento chapter and the Los Rios student chapter. And I'll let Abida and or Harsh talk about the ACM resources and move on to the next slide, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Marcus. Thanks for the invite. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Harsh Verma, Chairman ACM Sacramento Chapter and Vice President Global Innovation at R Systems and Intel Innovator. What is that coming up on Zoom? I need to share my video, or you got the slides, right?
We got the slides, yeah. Go ahead, next one, yeah. Isabel.
So we also have Dr. Abida talking about the Los Rios student chapter activities. But before that, the quick update, the ACM Sac State chapter is organizing a progressive hackathon, and ACM Sacramento chapter, the professional chapter, is supporting this event with workshops and distinguished speaker talks planned on Zoom. So it's going to be all virtual, but yes, the ACM Sacramento chapter is organizing some awards and a lot of support with help from the HQ. So please move on to the next slide. And the ACM student chapter at Los Rios Community College, I let Dr. Abida talk about it. I think she's there on the call.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Harsh, and thank you, Marcus, for this outstanding collection and outstanding program. I'm just going to say that that we have been so blessed to have the support of Marcus and Harsh, the professional chapter, and from all of the administrative folk at Los Rios. We had a very successful launch of the student chapter of the Los Rios ACM. We had a few distinguished speaker talks. In fact, Dr. Tanveer from IBM was there, IBM Watson. And we've had a couple of very successful codeathons and also a Master the Mainframe event. It was very well attended, not just by students, but also by industry professionals. There were workshops and talks, internship opportunities. It was a very good synergetic year for the ACM. The other thing we have been doing also at Sacramento City College is we have been preparing students to take leadership roles in organizing events and also interacting with industry. So that part of the puzzle where we have always tried to give students the opportunity to develop soft skills, organizational skills, develop the confidence, communication skills, all of those things. I'm happy to see that we have done talent scouting at Sacramento, not just at Sacramento City College, but across the 4 colleges. All these events have been open to all the students across the board. And in fact, we have been able to invite students from across Sacramento. We've had students from Sac State and also from UC Davis participate in our events. In fact, some of our events have become stellar events in the region, and we hope to make these magnet events and draw from professionals and the student community in the Sacramento area.
Thank you very much.
So I'm happy to say that we've had a very successful run, and for this, given the situation, we have converted our on-campus Codeathon to a virtual hackathon, and we hope to have that off the ground in the third week of April.
Perfect. Let us know so we can pass on that information. And one last final event that I'll mention for you is, because I do want to finish up our meeting, is the Future World Symposium. That's always been a great event to get very interesting speakers. That's run by the professional ACM chapter here in Sacramento. And if you can move to the next slide, Isabel, we've got some contact information for that as well. One more, please, if you wouldn't mind. Next slide. There we go. At sacramento@acm.org. But do put that on your calendar, October 8th for the next Future World Symposium, to get some awesome speakers. And what's the topic going to be, Harsh? Do you know yet?
So it's going to be sustainable innovation, Marcus. And that's what, moving from the last topic and the theme of computational sustainability to sustainable innovation, very apt in the current crisis situation, how we can have sustainable innovation. And yeah, thanks for sharing that slide about the ideas for some of the virtual workshops that we will be organizing. So ACM's also announced a free access to the digital library. So there's a lot of access, there are a lot of resources available for computing folks to get from ACM. Thank you so much again, Marcus.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And the access to the digital library is also available via the resources that you can get via the links that we will be distributing. I want to thank everybody very much for coming. One last thing that I have for you guys, or actually two last things. One, our team likes to learn about what you thought of this meeting and how we might be able to improve future meetings. There is a link that's on your screen right now, and if you've got a smartphone, there is a QR code that you can help us with a lot right now. If you would answer it, please, just a few questions about what you thought. We'd very much appreciate your feedback. And finally, our next meeting is scheduled for Friday, October 30th. That's just before Halloween. So you can get your thrill when it comes to ICT knowledge before you have your fun at night. Then celebrating the time of year. Our next meeting, along the lines of what Harsh mentioned as well, will be in artificial intelligence, machine learning, that will definitely have connections with the sustainability piece. So join us for that. Go ahead, Isabel.
I have one final thing. For those of you on the line, thank you so much for participating. We really value all of our speakers who were able to share some resources with our participants. We want to thank you, Marcus, for this being your last advisory. We reached out to Stephen Wright, the State Director of ICT and Digital Media for California Community Colleges, and he had some words to share about you that I wanted to read out loud. He says, I appreciate the professionalism and intellectual curiosity that Marcus has brought to the role of Regional Director of ICT and DM. He is highly regarded among his peers as an expert in both content and educational delivery of the various ICT disciplines. He speaks out and shares enthusiastically for the greater good of us all. It has been both a professional and personal pleasure for me to experience his wit, his courtesy, and his sense of values, which are inseparable characteristics of this classic gentleman. I look forward to his continued engagement with our team as well. We will continue to reach out to him. He cannot get away easily, as Jared had mentioned. And on behalf of Valley Vision, we would like to say thank you so much for your partnership. This has been a really great series of ICT advisories with you, and we hope to continue that partnership.
Thank you. That's very, very kind. I appreciate that that gesture more than you know. Thank you so very much. It's been great working with the Valley Vision team and the K-12 team, in addition to, of course, all my colleagues here within the Greater Sacramento region. And I will be around. So I'm not going anywhere. I'll be at beautiful Cosumnes River College. Go Hawks! And your students will be My students, if they're coming from K-12, and our graduates will be your future colleagues if you're an industry partner. In that spirit, once again, thank you very much for attending. Again, this meeting has been recorded and will be made available. We look forward to seeing you all back on Friday, October 30th. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day, a great weekend, and stay safe and healthy.
Thank you, Marcus. Thank you, everyone, for organizing this event.